Hey Hayden, this is Miss Tracy. So you asked me to help you with substitution. So this is what substitution is. Remember when we did all those problems in pre-algebra where we would say x plus y, we've got a y, plus m plus yx plus my, and then we would give you values for those, right? We would say x is equal to 2, y is equal to -2, m is equal to 3, right? And then we'd ask you to put those values in for these values, right? So we'd make buckets. We'd just make a bucket for each of these. We have the y and the x here. And we know that when we have the two variables next to each other, that's multiplication, because these parentheses right next to each other mean multiplication also. It's convenient that way. So for the x, we'd put in the 2, and here's the other x. And for y, we'd put in -2, -2, -2, and then for m, we'd put in 3. Remember these? All right, so that'd be -2 plus 3 minus 4 minus 6. So that would be +5, because we got two positive numbers. We put them together, and then we have -12 because we have these three negative numbers, right? And we put them together. And then that would be -7. That would be our answer. That's substitution. That, in a nutshell, is all of substitution. That's all it is. It's just that now we're doing more complicated substitution. So here's an example. I've got this, I've got these two problems. Here's the first one. 4x plus y is equal to -5, and 2x minus y is equal to -1. So we're supposed to solve this problem, and in your system, these are going to be on top of each other. And so your first instinct is to use elimination, right? To cancel these out and take 6x is equal to -6. That's our first instinct. But the problem tells us to use substitution. So we've got to take one of these problems and turn it into substitution. So I'm going to take this one and move it over here, out of the way. And because this is a positive variable all by itself, that is the one that is the easiest to make substitution, because we never want to have a negative variable for substitution, because then we have to multiply it by -1 to make it positive. We need to have the variable or the letter by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve for this one by itself. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. This cancels. So y is equal to -5 minus 4x. This is the value of y. Even though it's not something that we can really solve, this is what y is. And so wherever we see y in the other, in this other equation, that's what we're gonna put in. So we have 2x minus y, and we're gonna make a bucket for y, is equal to -1. And our bucket, we're going to take this entire value and we're going to put it in for y. So -5 minus 4x. Now we know when we have a negative outside, we multiply this by -1 times everything, because this is really saying the opposite of everything inside the parentheses. So we're going to do that. 2x, -1 times -5 is a +5. -1 times a -4x is a +4x, and that's equal to -1. Now we can add the 2 and the 4 together. So that's 5 plus 6x is equal to -1. If I subtract 5 from both sides, I get that 6x is equal to -6. Well, if I divide both sides by 6, then it's clear x is equal to -1, right? So that would be -1 for my x value. Don't know what y is yet, but because they're always written x, y in parentheses in alphabetical order. X comes first, then y, right? We know this. That's why we write the coordinate this way, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the value of x and y, which is just going to be the coordinate where these two lines cross. That is how that works. So now that we have the value for x, we can substitute it in right here because the value of y is already sorted out for us. We just have to do the mathematic calculation. So y is equal to -5 minus 4. Make our bucket for x and put the value of x in there. So y is equal to -5. -4 times -1 is a +4. Y is also equal to -1. Easy peasy. That is substitution on a more complicated level. That's what I'm looking for. So you're just going to solve for one positive variable. And whatever it might be, you take and substitute that in for that variable in the other equation. And then you solve it. You solve it for whatever that variable is. In this case, when you have x and y, when you sub in for y, there's going to be an x variable in here, which means when you move it over and sub it in, you're only going to have an x variable. And that's the point. You want to solve in terms of one variable at a time. And you can't do that if you have two of them in the same equation. So by substituting in some expression that is equal to the value of the other variable, usually it's in relationship to the other variable that's already there. So then that gets it down to 1x, this one variable in the whole equation. We know when we only have one, we can solve for that. But when we have two, it's hard to split those numbers up. We can't divide by two different variables. Here we were able to divide to get this one variable solved because 6 times something equals -6. If we had had 6 times something else, we wouldn't be able to divide to figure that out. So we have to get it to where there's only one variable in the whole equation. And the way we do that is through substitution. We solve for that one odd variable by itself. We make sure it's a positive number, because if it's a positive number, then we don't have to deal with, negative ones and getting the opposite. It's much more straightforward. So I've got another problem, and let's look at it. I'm going to clear this. And this problem says x minus 3y is equal to -7. And the other problem says 3x plus y is equal to -1. All right, those are my two expressions, or my two equations. So I'm going to pick one. I think I'm going to pick x this time because it's positive here. This y is positive here, and they don't have a coefficient in front of them, so it's easy to solve for it, right? So I'm going to use x because I can add 3y to both sides. This would cancel. So that leaves x is equal to -7 plus 3y. And it doesn't matter which order you put these in regards to a substitution. Doesn't matter. You could rearrange it and make it 3y minus 7. Doesn't matter. It's still going to solve out the same way. We're going to take this value right here and use it in this equation as the value for x, because that's what x equals. So if this is what x equals, then that means we should be able to put it in and solve the problem. So 3 times the value of x, which is -7 plus 3y plus y, is equal to -1. See how I did that? It's really kind of common sense, right? Whatever I say x is worth from the first equation has to be true for the second equation if they're in the same system. Now you can't do that willy-nilly, but in the same problem with the equations that you're given that are related to one another, then it has to be true. It has to work. So you've got to solve for that one variable by itself and then put it in. And what I'll do is I'll show you how it works both ways, regardless of which variable you choose to start with. So we solved for x this time. Let's do the math. That'll be negative 21, 3 times negative 7. 3 times 3, that's 9y plus y is equal to negative 1. Okay? If I add these two together, I get 10y, right? And that would still be negative 21 plus 10y is equal to negative 1. Now, if I add 20 to get rid of this so I can get this by itself, if I add 20 to both sides to keep my equation balanced, I'm sorry, why would I add 20? That makes no sense at all. I did the math in my head too early, sorry. This cancels. This is now 10y is equal to a positive 20. So if I divide both sides by 10, y is equal to 2. All right, I'm going to write that up here. Now remember, it's always xy, so y is equal to 2. And now that I know what y is equal to, I'm going to substitute that value in over here to solve for what x is equal to. So x is equal to negative 7 plus 3y, and that y is a positive 2. So x is equal to negative 7 plus 6, x is equal to negative 1. All right, so x is equal to negative 1, y is equal to positive 2. That is the point at which these two lines would intersect. That's what we solve for. So now that we know what this answer is, we're going to solve it the other way. And clear the page. So remember, this was negative 1, positive 2. That's what we solved for originally. So now I have the same problem. And if you cannot solve it the same way, with the same solution, when you solve for either variable first, then you got to check your calculations. That's going to be a way you can check your work. So this time I'm going to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. You know, last time I solved for x first. This time I'm solving for y. Y is equal to negative 1 minus 3x. All right, that's my substitution value that I'm going to put in over here for this y. So x minus 3, and I'm with the value for y, negative 1 minus 3x, is equal to negative 7, right? I just took this value and I put it in for this y. Okay, so let's do the calculation. X, negative 3 times negative 1, that's a positive 3. Negative 3 times negative 3x, that's going to be a positive 9x, is equal to negative 7. Okay, x and x, that's 10x, because we know this is a 1x really. And so that's a positive 3 plus 10x is equal to negative 7. All right, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. I get 10x is equal to negative 10. If I divide both sides by 10, x is equal to negative 1. What was x equal to? Haha, negative 1. Look at there. We have the same value. So now if I take this negative 1 and I put it in for the value of x here, you take it and you solve in up here. Y is equal to negative 1 minus 3, and the value of x is negative 1, right? Y is equal to negative 1. Negative 3 times negative 1 is a positive 3. Negative 1 and positive 3 is a positive 2. What is the value of y? It's a positive 2. So you should be able to solve for the same point regardless of which one of those variables you start with. You're always going to, if you do it right, you're always going to get the same point. Okay? All right, if you have any more questions about substitution, substitution is just what it says it is. You are substituting a value for a variable or a letter into the other equation. But you've got to take the first equation and get it down, solve for the one variable that you want to solve for, whether it's the x first or the y first. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that you solve for a single positive variable or letter. Okay? And we're going to solve for that. And then substitute the expression the variable equals into next, or I should say other, or second, the other equation. Then your final step is to we're going to substitute solution of the variable. Substitute solution of this, and this would be this right here, into the original substitution. So by that I mean, once you solve, you got your substitution value, you put it into the other equation. Once you solve for that variable, then you sub it back in. So this would be step 1, step 2, step 3, right? Solve for an expression for this variable, sub it in. Once you solve for that letter that's in there, put it back into the original substitution and solve for that one. And then finally, 4, enter as a coordinate. X, Y. If you have a problem remembering which one is first, it's always in alphabetical order. You know, math and grammar work together in that regard. It's always in alphabetical order. All right, X always comes first and then Y. Okay, if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. I hope this clarified all of that for you and that you understand substitution better. If not, call me again, message me again, let me know. I'm still stuck on it, and we'll go through it. If there's something else that you need to work on, let me know. We'll work on that one too. Okay, I want you to understand how to do all the things you need to know how to do. And it's more than just some weird math that you don't think you're going to use. This is actually teaching your brain how to break down problems in the real world, in real life, how to pull things apart, put them back together, and see things from a different perspective. It's using math to teach you how to do that. But if you can do that, you'll be able to do that with more things than just math. You'll be able to do that with arguments. You'll be able to do that with physical things. You'll be able to do that with recipes, pulling things apart, putting them back together. It's teaching your brain how to see things and how to sort them out. Okay? So just like your mom says, your brain is a muscle, and the more you use it, the more you work it, the better it will work. And you should trust that and believe that, because she is right. The more you use your brain, the better it will work for you, just like your biceps. The more you use them, the better you train them, the more they can do. And I want that for you. So have a Merry Christmas. I hope this helps you, and ask for more help always when you need it. Bye for now.